The submersible descended through layers of crushing darkness, its lights carving through the abyssal depths like silver needles. Marcus Webb pressed his face against the reinforced viewport, watching the endless blue-black void swallow them whole. Somewhere far below, the ocean floor waited with its ancient secrets. "First time down to the Mariana complex?" asked the pilot, her voice crackling through the intercom. She was a weathered woman with salt and pepper hair pulled back in a practical bun, her hands steady on the controls despite the treacherous currents. "First time anywhere this deep," Marcus admitted, checking his equipment one final time. His specialized tools gleamed in their foam-lined cases, resonance scanners, molecular analyzers, and delicate instruments designed to interface with alien technology without damaging it. "Though I've worked on Xenotech before, just never at the bottom of the ocean." The pilot, who'd introduced herself as Captain Torres, chuckled. "The Mariana complex isn't just any underwater facility. It's been down here for 15 years, ever since they discovered the chamber. Built the whole research station around it, actually." Marcus nodded, though his mind was already focused on the mystery ahead. The briefing had been frustratingly vague, an alien artifact of unknown origin, impervious to all attempts at analysis or activation. For centuries old, possibly older. The kind of puzzle that had made his reputation in the Xenotech community. The submersible's external lights suddenly illuminated massive metal structures rising from the seafloor like an underwater city. The Mariana complex sprawled across the ocean bottom in interconnected domes and towers, its bioluminescent markings creating an ethereal glow in the crushing darkness. "Welcome to the deepest research facility on Earth," Captain Torres announced as they approached the docking bay. "Hope you're not claustrophobic." Marcus felt the familiar thrill of discovery as they entered the facility's docking tube. The transition from the submersible's cramped interior to the complex's spacious corridors was a relief, though the constant awareness of millions of tons of water pressing against the reinforced walls never quite left his mind. Keeper Valdrin met them at the airlock, a tall, elegant figure with silver hair and eyes the color of deep ocean trenches. Despite appearing to be in his 60s, he moved with the fluid grace of someone much younger. Something about his bearing suggested he wasn't entirely human, though Marcus couldn't put his finger on what exactly. "Mr. Webb," Valdrin said, his voice carrying an odd accent Marcus couldn't place. "Your reputation precedes you. We've been waiting for someone with your particular expertise." They walked through corridors lined with viewing ports that offered glimpses of the alien landscape outside. Strange coral formations that shouldn't exist at this depth swayed in the current, their bioluminescent patterns creating an otherworldly light show. The chamber was discovered by deep-sea explorers in 2009, Valdrin explained as they descended in a glass elevator. They initially thought it was some kind of natural formation, but the perfect geometric patterns and the energy reading suggested otherwise. "We've been studying it ever since." "Any theories about its origin?" Marcus asked, noting how the older man's eyes seemed to glow faintly in the elevator's dim lighting. "Many theories, few answers," Valdrin replied cryptically. "What we do know is that it's been sealed for approximately 400 years, give or take a decade. The preservation field inside has kept its contents in perfect stasis." The elevator stopped at sublevel 7, and Marcus felt his breath catch as they entered the chamber. The room was vast, its domed ceiling lost in shadows above. But it was the structure at the center that drew his attention like a magnet. The crystalline chamber rose from the floor like a work of art, its faceted surfaces catching and refracting the ambient light in impossible ways. Intricate patterns of silver and blue light pulsed through its structure in a slow, hypnotic rhythm that reminded Marcus of a heartbeat. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Valdrin murmured, though his tone held notes of sadness. "And completely impenetrable. We've tried everything, sonic resonance, electromagnetic fields, even attempts at quantum entanglement. Nothing affects it." Marcus approached the chamber slowly, his professional instincts warring with something deeper, a strange pull he couldn't explain. As he drew closer, the patterns within the crystal seemed to pulse faster, responding to his presence. "That's new," Valdrin said sharply. "The patterns have never reacted to proximity before." Inside the chamber, Marcus could see a figure floating in what appeared to be a liquid medium, though the crystal made it difficult to make out details. The being appeared humanoid but with distinctly alien features, skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner light, hair that floated around the face like silk underwater. "Who is she?" Marcus asked, somehow certain the figure was female. "We believe she's royalty of some kind," Valdrin replied. "The craftsmanship of the chamber, the preservation field, the location, everything suggests someone of great importance. We've taken to calling her the Sleeping Princess." Marcus set down his equipment cases and began unpacking his instruments. "What's the closest you've gotten to opening it?" "The surface remains completely solid to all attempts at penetration. We've tried everything from diamond-tipped drills to molecular disruptors. It's as if the chamber exists in a state of quantum flux, simultaneously solid and permeable depending on some unknown variable." As Marcus calibrated his resonance scanner, he noticed the patterns in the crystal growing brighter. The slow pulse had accelerated to match his own heartbeat, and he could swear he felt a warmth emanating from the structure despite the chamber's cool temperature. "Mr. Webb," Valdrin said, his voice urgent. "The readings are spiking. I've never seen anything like this." Marcus looked up from his instruments to see the entire chamber blazing with light. The patterns within the crystal had become a complex dance of silver and blue, pulsing in rhythm with something he felt in his bones. Without thinking, he reached out toward the surface. "Wait, don't," Valdrin started, but it was too late. Marcus's palm pressed against the crystal surface, and instead of meeting solid resistance, his hand passed through as if the chamber were made of water. The moment his skin made contact with the liquid inside, everything changed. The figure's eyes snapped open, revealing irises the color of deep ocean pearls. She gasped, her body convulsing as centuries of stasis ended in an instant. The liquid around her began to glow with the same intensity as her luminescent blue skin, and Marcus felt an electric shock travel up his arm. "By the depths," she whispered, her voice like waves against shore. Her gaze fixed on Marcus, and he felt as if he were drowning in those pearl-bright eyes. You're not of the water." "I'm human," Marcus managed, his voice hoarse. "From the surface world." The woman, princess, he corrected himself, tried to sit up in the viscous liquid, her movements graceful despite her obvious disorientation. Her skin held an otherworldly beauty, shifting between blue and silver as emotions played across her features. She wore what appeared to be a form-fitting garment made of scales that caught the light like precious gems. "Human," she repeated, testing the word. "I have heard tales of your kind, but I thought them myths. Surface dwellers who walk on land and breathe air. What's your name?" Marcus asked, unable to look away from her mesmerizing features. "I am Nerissa, daughter of Triton, rightful heir to the throne of Aquitilia." She reached up toward him with a graceful hand, and when their fingers touched, Marcus felt a surge of warmth that seemed to resonate in his very soul. "And you, surface dweller, have awakened me from a sleep I thought would last forever." Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Emergency lights bathed the chamber in red, and the sound of heavy blast doors slamming shut echoed through the corridors. Valdrin's expression shifted from wonder to alarm. "The awakening has triggered the ancient protocols," he said, his voice tight with concern. The chamber was designed to contain any threat that might emerge from stasis. Nerissa's eyes widened with fear, and Marcus instinctively moved closer to the chamber. "Contain what threat?" "The ones who put me here," Nerissa whispered, her voice trembling. "They poisoned me, Marcus, may I call you Marcus? They wanted to ensure I would never wake to claim my birthright. If the chamber's defenses are activating." "They're still out there," Marcus finished grimly. "Still waiting." Valdrin was already moving toward a communication panel, his fingers flying over controls. "The facility is going into full lockdown. Nothing gets in or out until the threat is neutralized." "Then we're trapped," Marcus said, looking back at Nerissa. The princess was struggling to climb out of the chamber, her movements hindered by centuries of stasis. Without hesitation, he reached in and lifted her out, her weight almost nothing in his arms. "Thank you," she breathed against his neck, her skin warm and soft despite its alien texture. "I haven't felt strong enough to stand on my own yet." Marcus helped her to her feet, keeping one arm around her waist as she found her balance. The contact sent shivers through both of them, something electric and undeniable that had nothing to do with the chamber's strange energies. "Your Highness," Valdrin said, approaching with obvious reverence. "I am Valdrin, keeper of this chamber. I have waited 4 centuries for your awakening." Nerissa's pearl-bright eyes studied the older man intently. "You are not fully human either, are you, Keeper? There is something of the deep waters in your blood." "My grandmother was of your people," Valdrin admitted. "Exiled long ago for loving a surface dweller. I have guarded your rest in hopes of one day seeing Aquitilia's princess restored to her throne." The facility shuddered around them, and through the chamber's viewing ports, Marcus could see lights moving in the darkness outside. Sleek shapes cutting through the water with predatory grace. "They've found us," Nerissa said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "The same ones who poisoned me centuries ago. They've been waiting, watching, ensuring that I would never wake." Marcus felt a protective instinct surge through him that surprised him with its intensity. "What do they want?" "Power," Nerissa replied simply. "Aquitilia has been without its rightful ruler for 400 years. The council has grown corrupt, the noble houses have forgotten their duties to the realm. My return threatens everything they've built in my absence." Another impact shook the facility, and Marcus could hear the distant sound of cutting tools against metal. "How long do we have?" Valdrin checked his instruments, his face grim. "The outer defenses are holding, but they won't last long. These attackers know the facility's weaknesses, they've been planning this for a very long time." Nerissa placed her hand on Marcus's chest, and he felt that electric warmth again. "I'm sorry, Marcus. You've been drawn into something dangerous simply by being here when I awoke. But I'm grateful it was you who woke me. There's something about your touch." She trailed off, her cheeks flushing with a deeper blue color that Marcus found utterly enchanting. "What do you mean?" "The poison that held me in stasis was designed to respond only to the bloodline of my enemies," she explained. "It should have been impossible to wake me unless one of them chose to do so. But your touch broke the enchantment as if it were nothing." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the chamber's temperature. "What does that mean?" "It means," Valdrin said slowly, "that you two are connected by something far deeper than chance. The old magic recognizes bonds that transcend species, transcend worlds. You were meant to find each other." The facility shuddered again, and this time the lights flickered. Through the chamber's viewing ports, Marcus could see the shadowy forms of their attackers moving closer. But as he looked down at Nerissa, her pearl-bright eyes reflecting his own face, he realized that despite the danger, despite the impossibility of their situation, he had never felt more alive. "Whatever happens," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "I won't let them take you back to that sleep." Nerissa smiled, and it was like watching sunrise over the ocean. "Then we face this together, my unlikely hero. The depths have chosen you as my champion, and I choose you as well." As the sound of their enemies closing in grew louder, Marcus held Nerissa closer, feeling the warmth of her skin against his and the steady rhythm of her heartbeat. Whatever force had brought them together, whatever ancient magic had allowed his touch to wake her, he knew that his life had just changed forever. The real adventure was just beginning. The facility's emergency lighting cast everything in an ominous red glow as Marcus helped Nerissa through the corridors. Her steps were growing stronger with each passing minute, but she still leaned against him for support, her warm presence both comforting and distracting in their dire circumstances. "The deepest levels," Valdrin said, leading them away from the main thoroughfares. "There are maintenance passages that connect to the original cave system. If we can reach them before..." An explosion rocked the facility, sending them stumbling against the reinforced walls. Through the nearest viewport, Marcus could see the elegant silhouettes of attacking vessels, their bioluminescent markings pulsing in complex patterns as they coordinated their assault. Aquatilian warships, Nerissa breathed, her pearl-bright eyes wide with recognition. But the designs are wrong, corrupted. These aren't the noble vessels I remember. 400 years of unchecked ambition will do that, Valdrin replied grimly, punching in access codes to sealed blast doors. The houses that remain loyal to the true throne have been systematically eliminated or driven into hiding. What you see out there represents the new order. As they descended deeper into the facility, Marcus noticed changes in Nerissa that went beyond her recovering strength. Her luminescent skin seemed to glow brighter in the presence of the facility's water recycling systems, and droplets of moisture in the air appeared to gravitate toward her, creating a subtle shimmer around her form. The water responds to you, he observed, fascinated despite their perilous situation. Nerissa glanced at him with surprise. You can see that? Most surface dwellers are blind to the deep currents. She held up her hand, and Marcus watched in amazement as moisture condensed around her fingers, forming delicate spirals of liquid that danced in the air. It's stronger now than it was before my sleep. Perhaps the stasis changed something in me. Or perhaps, Valdrin suggested, glancing back at them with knowing eyes, your awakening by one not of your world has awakened new aspects of your power. Another explosion, closer this time, cut off further discussion. They reached the maintenance levels just as the sounds of cutting tools echoed from the floors above. The corridors here were narrower, barely wide enough for two people to walk side by side, and Marcus found himself acutely aware of every point where his body brushed against Nerissa's. Here, Valdrin whispered, stopping at what appeared to be a solid wall. He placed his palm against a hidden sensor, and a section of the wall slid away to reveal a tunnel carved from natural rock. This leads to the cave systems. From there, we can access the deeper waters. The tunnel was cramped and humid, forcing Marcus and Nerissa to move in single file with him leading the way. His flashlight beam revealed walls that glistened with moisture and strange formations that definitely weren't natural rock. Coral, Nerissa explained when he paused to examine them. My people shaped these passages long ago, when we first discovered this deep place. The facility was built on top of one of our ancient sanctuaries. Your people have been here before. The deep trenches have always been sacred to us, she replied, her voice echoing softly in the confined space. Places where the pressure of the depths meets the memory of stone. Perfect for meditation, for other things. Something in her tone made Marcus pause and turn back to look at her. In the narrow tunnel, they were close enough that he could feel her breath on his face, could see the way her pearl-bright eyes reflected his flashlight beam. What other things, he asked, his voice rougher than he intended. Nerissa's cheeks flushed that deeper blue color again. The bonding chambers. Where young Aquatilians would come to, discover compatibility with potential mates. The deep places amplify emotional connections, make it impossible to hide true feelings. The implications hung between them in the humid air. Marcus became acutely aware of his accelerated heartbeat, of the way Nerissa's scent, something like ocean spray and exotic flowers, filled the confined space. Marcus, she whispered, her hand coming up to rest on his chest. Where she touched him, warmth spread through his body like liquid fire. I can feel your emotions as clearly as my own. Is this real, what's happening between us? Or is it just the adrenaline, the danger? Before he could answer, the sound of pursuit echoed from the tunnel behind them. Valdrin's urgent whisper carried through the darkness, they've found the entrance. We need to move. They pressed forward through increasingly natural passages, the artificial lighting giving way to the soft bioluminescence of deep-sea organisms. The tunnel opened into a vast underwater cavern, its ceiling lost in shadows above. Strange coral formations provided cover among pools of water that seemed to glow with their own inner light. A bonding chamber, Nerissa confirmed, her voice filled with wonder. I haven't seen one since I was a child. They're even more beautiful than I remembered. Marcus helped her down from the tunnel opening, and the moment her feet touched the cavern floor, the entire space seemed to come alive. The coral formations pulsed with brighter light, the pools began to bubble gently, and the water itself seemed to sing with a low, harmonic frequency. It recognizes you, Valdrin said, emerging behind them. Royal blood carries the deep magic more strongly than common lineage. The sound of their pursuers was getting closer, echoing through the tunnel they'd just exited. Valdrin moved to a control panel hidden within what appeared to be natural coral growth and began entering commands. "I can seal the tunnel," he said, "but it will take time. And once it's sealed, we'll be trapped here until I can find another way out." "Do it," Marcus said without hesitation. "We need time to figure out our next move." As Valdrin worked, Marcus became aware that he and Nerissa were standing in one of the glowing pools. The water came up to their waists, pleasantly warm and somehow more buoyant than normal water. Nerissa's scaled garment floated around her like liquid mercury, and her skin seemed to absorb and reflect the pool's bioluminescence. "The water here is different," she explained, noticing his curiosity. "Charged with minerals from the deep vents, infused with the life essence of my people. It has properties." "What kind of properties?" She moved closer to him in the pool, the water supporting her movements with impossible grace. "Healing. Rejuvenation. And..." Her voice dropped to a whisper, "It reveals truth." In the bonding chambers, partners would enter the sacred pools to discover if their connection was genuine. Marcus felt the water's strange properties working on him, loosening muscles he hadn't realized were tense, clearing his mind of everything except the woman before him. "And what truth is it revealing to you?" Nerissa's hands came up to frame his face, her touch gentle but electric. "That what I feel for you is real. Not just gratitude for waking me, not just the excitement of danger. This." She pressed closer, her body warm and soft against his in the supporting water. "You make me feel alive in ways I'd forgotten were possible." "Nerissa," he breathed, his arms coming around her waist. The water swirled around them, carrying her scent and something else, something that spoke to parts of his mind he'd never known existed. "The tunnel is sealed," Valdrin announced, but his voice seemed to come from very far away. "We're safe for now, but," he stopped mid-sentence, and when Marcus glanced over, the older man's expression was knowing and slightly amused. "Ah. The bonding pool is already working its magic, I see." "Is it magic?" Marcus asked, never taking his eyes off Nerissa. "Or is it just us?" "Does it matter?" she replied, rising up in the water until their faces were level. "Marcus, I know this is happening fast, I know the circumstances are impossible, but..." He silenced her with a kiss, and the moment their lips met, the entire cavern blazed with light. The coral formations pulsed in rhythm with their heartbeats, the water around them glowed brighter, and Marcus felt something fundamental shift inside his chest. It was as if a door had opened in his soul, letting in light he'd never known he was missing. When they parted, Nerissa's eyes were wide with wonder. "The bond," she whispered. "It's real. I can feel your emotions as clearly as my own." "I can feel yours too," Marcus admitted, amazed. Joy, desire, hope, and underneath it all, a deep well of loneliness that had been with her for centuries. "You've been alone for so long." "Not anymore," she said firmly, her hands tangling in his hair. "The deep magic has chosen you as my mate, Marcus Webb. If you'll have me." Before he could answer, the sound of explosions echoed through the cavern. Not close, but getting closer. Their pursuers had found another way in. "We need to keep moving," Valdrin said urgently. "There are deeper passages, ancient routes that lead to the open ocean. But the journey will be dangerous." Marcus looked into Nerissa's pearl-bright eyes, seeing his own reflection there along with something deeper, a connection that transcended species, transcended worlds. "Where you go, I go," he said simply. She smiled, and it was like watching stars being born. "Then we face the depths together, my chosen mate. But first..." She pulled him deeper into the glowing pool, and as the water closed over their heads, Marcus discovered that he could somehow breathe the luminescent liquid. The bonding pool's magic was changing him, adapting him, making it possible for a surface dweller to survive in the deepest places of his love's world. They surfaced together, both glowing with bioluminescent patterns that matched perfectly, marking them as a bonded pair. The sight took Marcus's breath away. He was becoming something new, something that belonged to both worlds. The transformation has begun, Valdrin observed with satisfaction. You're adapting to her world, just as she's learning to exist in yours. The bond is stronger than I've ever seen. Director Helena Cross's voice suddenly crackled through hidden speakers throughout the cavern. If you can hear this, get to the emergency transport bay on sublevel 12. We've got company, lots of it, and they're not here to negotiate. Helena, Valdrin breathed. She's still alive. Who is Helena? Nerissa asked, helping Marcus out of the pool. He noticed that his skin now held a faint luminescence similar to hers, and his lungs felt different, capable of processing both air and water. The facility director, Marcus replied. If she's alive, she might have a way out of here. As they prepared to leave the sanctuary of the bonding chamber, Nerissa caught Marcus's hand. Whatever happens next, whatever we face, remember that you are mine now, and I am yours. The deep magic has spoken. Marcus squeezed her hand, feeling the truth of their bond thrumming through his transformed body. Always, he promised, and meant it with every fiber of his being. Together, they followed Valdrin into the deeper passages, ready to face whatever their enemies threw at them. The woman he'd awakened with a touch had become the center of his universe, and he would move heaven and earth, or in this case, the deepest oceans, to keep her safe. The ancient passages wound deeper into the ocean floor, carved from volcanic rock and lined with coral formations that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Marcus marveled at how naturally he now moved through the water-filled sections, his transformed lungs extracting oxygen from both air and liquid with equal ease. Beside him, Nerissa glided through their underwater journey with the grace of someone born to the depths. The facility's emergency transport bay is compromised, Director Helena Cross's voice crackled through Valdrin's waterproof communicator. Armed hostiles have taken control of sublevel 12. I'm reading multiple breach points throughout the complex. Helena, this is Valdrin. We're in the old passages with Princess Nerissa and the engineer who awakened her. What's your status? A pause, filled with the distant sound of weapons fire. Alive, barely. I'm in the marine biology lab with whatever staff I could gather. These attackers aren't just after the princess, they're systematically destroying all research related to Aquitilian technology. Marcus felt Nerissa's hand tighten in his as they navigated a particularly narrow passage. Through their bond, he could sense her growing anger and something else, a power awakening that made the water around them thrum with energy. They're erasing history, she said, her voice carrying an edge that made the surrounding coral formations pulse brighter. 400 years of isolation, and they're still trying to bury the old ways. Princess, Helena's voice came through the communicator again, tinged with awe. Is it really you? The readings we're getting from the deep passages are off the charts. It's like the entire ocean floor is responding to something. It's responding to her, Marcus said, watching in fascination as schools of deep-sea creatures began following them through the passages, their own bioluminescence creating a living constellation around Nerissa. She's awakening something down here. Valdrin paused at a junction where multiple passages converged, consulting a map carved into the coral wall. There's a hidden grotto ahead, one of the deepest sanctuaries. We can reach it through the thermal vents, but it's a difficult swim. How difficult? Marcus asked, though he was surprised to find the question didn't worry him as much as it should have. His body felt capable of things that would have been impossible hours ago. For a surface dweller? Impossible. For someone undergoing the deep bond transformation? Valdrin smiled. Let's find out. They entered a section where the water was noticeably warmer, heated by underwater thermal vents that created columns of superheated water rising through the darkness. The pressure should have been crushing at this depth, but Marcus found he could not only survive it but thrive in it. This is incredible, he breathed, watching as Nerissa swam ahead of him, her hair flowing like liquid silver in the thermal currents. Her scaled garment had adapted to the environment, becoming more streamlined, and her skin glowed brighter in response to the mineral-rich water. "You're adapting faster than any recorded case," Valdrin observed, swimming alongside them with surprising grace for his apparent age. "The bond between you two is accelerating the transformation process." They emerged into a hidden grotto that took Marcus's breath away. The cavern was vast, its walls covered in coral formations that created natural seats and platforms. But it was the water itself that was most remarkable. It glowed with an inner light that seemed to pulse in rhythm with Nerissa's heartbeat, and strange, beautiful creatures swam through it like living jewels. "A deep sanctuary," Nerissa explained, pulling herself onto a natural platform. "These were places where my people would come for the most sacred rituals, bonding ceremonies, royal coronations, the awakening of deep powers." As she spoke, the water around the platform began to glow brighter, and Marcus realized that the sacred pool was responding to both of them now. Where their bond had been formed in the facility's bonding chamber, here it could deepen into something even more profound. "Captain Reed Blackwater's forces are mobilizing," Helena's voice came through the communicator, distorted but urgent. "Human military vessels, but they're working with the Aquitilian hostiles. This is bigger than just a succession dispute, Valdrin. Someone's planning a full alliance between corrupt factions of both species." "Captain Blackwater," Nerissa repeated, her eyes flashing with recognition. "I know that name. His family has served mine for generations, but if he's turned traitor." "People change in 4 centuries, Valdrin said grimly. "Especially when there's power to be gained." Marcus watched as Nerissa dove back into the sacred pool, her movements fluid and purposeful. The water began to swirl around her, forming patterns that reminded him of the crystalline chamber where he'd first awakened her. But this was different, wilder, more primal. "Nerissa, what are you doing?" "Awakening the deep magic fully," she replied, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated through the water. "If we're to face what's coming, we'll need every advantage. And that includes completing our bond." She held out her hand to him, and Marcus didn't hesitate. The moment he entered the sacred pool, the water around them exploded with light. He felt the transformation in his body accelerate, his senses expanding beyond anything he'd thought possible. He could feel the currents of the entire ocean, could sense the movements of creatures miles away, could taste the mineral composition of water from a dozen different sources. "Now you see as I see," Nerissa whispered, swimming into his arms. "Feel as I feel." Their kiss was electric, sending ripples of light through the sacred water. Marcus felt their minds touch, sharing memories and emotions with an intimacy that went beyond the physical. He saw flashes of her life before the poisoning, a princess who had loved her people deeply, who had fought against corruption in the royal court, who had been betrayed by those she trusted most. In return, she saw his life on the surface, his dedication to understanding alien technologies, his loneliness despite his professional success, his deep longing for connection that he'd never been able to name until now. "I see why the magic chose you," she murmured against his lips. "You've been searching for me your whole life, just as I've been waiting for you." Their lovemaking in the sacred pool was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. The water supported and enhanced every touch, every caress, creating sensations that transcended the purely physical. He felt as though he were making love not just to Nerissa, but to the ocean itself, to the deep magic that connected all living things in the depths. When they finally came together, the entire grotto blazed with light. The coral formations sang in harmonic frequencies, the sacred water glowed like liquid starlight, and Marcus felt something fundamental shift in the very fabric of reality around them. "The royal bond," Valdrin breathed from where he'd been standing guard at the grotto's entrance. "I haven't seen one formed in over 2 centuries. You're not just lovers now, you're rulers, bound by the deep magic itself." As the light faded, Marcus found himself changed in ways that went beyond the physical. He could feel Nerissa's presence like a warm flame in his chest, could sense her emotions and thoughts as clearly as his own. More than that, he could feel the ocean responding to him, recognizing him as Nerissa's chosen mate and co-ruler. "How do you feel?" Nerissa asked, her pearl-bright eyes studying his face. Like I've found my place in the universe, Marcus replied honestly. Like everything that came before was just preparation for this moment. She smiled, and he could feel her joy and love through their bond like sunshine on water. Then you're ready for what comes next. Which is? We take back my throne, she said, her voice carrying new authority. And we show both our peoples what a true alliance can accomplish. A new voice suddenly echoed through the grotto, transmitted through hidden speakers in the coral walls. It was cultured, aristocratic, and filled with barely contained fury. Princess Nerissa, if you can hear this, I am Ambassador Thane of the Third House. Your awakening has caused considerable disruption to the established order. I offer you one chance to surrender yourself for proper rehabilitation. Refuse, and we will be forced to take more drastic measures. Nerissa's expression hardened, and Marcus felt her rage through their bond like a cold current. Thane. He was one of my cousin's advisors before my poisoning. I should have known he'd be involved in this. What kind of drastic measures? Marcus asked, though he suspected he didn't want to know the answer. The kind that involved the complete destruction of this facility and everyone in it, Valdrin replied grimly. Including Director Cross and her staff. Through their bond, Marcus felt Nerissa's determination crystallize into something as hard and unyielding as diamond. Then we end this now, she said, rising from the sacred pool. Her transformation was complete now, she was no longer just a princess awakened from stasis, but a queen ready to reclaim her birthright. What do you need from me? Marcus asked, rising beside her. His own transformation had left him changed in ways he was still discovering, but he could feel new strength flowing through his body, new abilities awakening in response to their deepened bond. Everything, Nerissa replied, taking his hand. We're going to do something that hasn't been attempted in 1,000 years. We're going to unite the deep magic with surface technology, Aquatilian power with human ingenuity. She turned to Valdrin, her voice ringing with royal authority. Contact Director Cross. Tell her to gather every piece of Aquatilian technology in the facility and bring it to the main laboratory. We're going to show our enemies what a bonded royal pair can accomplish. As they prepared to leave the sanctuary, Marcus caught Nerissa's hand. Are you sure about this? Once we surface, once we face them directly, there's no going back. Nerissa's smile was radiant, full of love and fierce determination. My chosen mate, my co-ruler, my heart, she said, pulling him into one last kiss. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. We were meant for this moment, meant to change both our worlds. Marcus felt the truth of her words resonate through their bond, through the deep magic that now flowed in his veins. Whatever they faced next, they would face it together, two hearts beating as one, two souls united by forces older than civilization itself. The real battle was about to begin, but for the first time since awakening the sleeping princess, Marcus felt ready for whatever the depths might throw at them. He had found his mate, his purpose, and his destiny in the space of a single day. Everything else was just details.